I've been hearing pretty regularly that leadership has a leadership problem. And so, what is the problem that leadership has, and how can these four different types of leadership help to keep us in check?
The problem with leadership and a leader being the problem is oftentimes we haven't turned the mirror on ourselves. There's the golden rule, do unto others as you'd want done unto yourself. But I actually coach around the platinum rule, do unto others as they would want done to themselves. Only do I have to know myself to lead myself, I actually have to know you too. Think about each person as a plant and you're the gardener. So with the little plant card that you might have in a plant, you need to know in each person you lead, what kind of sunshine do they need? What kind of water do they need? When do they need to prune? When do they need to grow? How do we get each person to thrive? And I mean, listen, if you're a parent, you do not raise every child the same. Same thing with the teams that you lead and people you lead. And when you lead yourself, when do you support yourself too much? When do you dominate yourself too much? And how can you liberate yourself as you liberate others?
The idea of job security is outdated as a landline. If you haven't been in a search for a while, it's probable you will at some point, by choice or not. Most executives admit to staying way too long, or sense what's coming and justify staying anyway. There's another reason. The faulty belief that navigating to what's next will inevitably be worse and has to suck. Screw that. Lauren Greif has spent a lifetime in corporate and executive search, calling bullshit on stale career advice that most still use. This is Career Blast in a Half, the career podcast for executives ready to cut past outdated career advice to fuel your outcomes now. So let's go.
Well, hello, and we're back at Career Blast in the Half, and we have a real leader here today. And I say that because I'm talking to you who's listening, and I'm also talking to our guest today, Masi Willis. And first and foremost, one of my favorite things about Masi is that she is a firm believer that everyone is already in that leadership seat. But what she does is she helps companies around the globe. I mean, we're lucky to have her here today because most of the time she's on a plane, train, or automobile. So she's actually here today, and she's going to talk to us about our four leadership styles, what they are, why we need them, why we can benefit in knowing what to do with them, and what happens if we don't know what they are and how to exercise them. You can also always find Masi on LinkedIn. We'll share that information in the show notes much, much later on. But before we get into the show, I just want to say something to you guys. I've kind of kept it on the down low, but I'm gonna share it here for the first time, and then I'll hype it up later. We passed the 100 show mark. I can't even believe it. And it's all because of you amazing listeners. So first and foremost, huge love. Thank you. I made that little heart thingy with my hands. Thank you so much for listening and all of your support. If you haven't done so already, please, all I'm ever going to ask you to do, I sound like Stephen Bartlett from Diary of a CEO, is put a review there, because guess what? That's how we grow. And that matters. It matters for our rankings. And since we are definitely out there looking for sponsors and hustling on that end, you're helping. And you're helping when you listen. You're helping when you share it. You're helping even when you comment on LinkedIn. So back to Masi Willis today. Thank you so much. I mean, listen, I just spent 3 incredible days with you. So I don't know how I got so lucky to have this as the piggyback, but man, thank you for coming, Masi.
Man, thank you for having me. It was such a blast. It's always been great getting to know you, but be in the space with people, there is nothing like in real life. So I'm honored to be here. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it, Lauren.
Goodness, it's our pleasure. It's my pleasure. And I always like to understand this question, right? Of all the wonderful things that you could do, because I know you have a horse or 2 or 7, right? You live on a horse farm. I know you're like a proud Southern girl, but
Yeah.
why are you somebody who is so incredibly passionate about leadership? Why have you
Mm,
built your entire career around it?
mm.
As you mentioned, like since you're about 20 years old.
Yeah.
So how did this become your, I'm waving my hands too. How did this become your thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I am actually someone who has a very nonlinear life. In the hiring world, and when we ask people, like, how long have they been in a job? I would probably be the person on the resume that would have jumped too many times to be hired. But in the nonlinear road, what I've realized for 30 years of insurance and movie making and event producing and motorcycle ride trails that I planned, and in an accounting firm and business transformation, I realized that every single thing I did, and when I did it, I had great leaders and I had horrible leaders. And I was a great employee and I was a horrible employee. And in the minute a pandemic happened, I really reevaluated my whole life and went, what was the consistent thing that over this nonlinear life had I actually done? And one thing that I consistently done in my volunteer life was really pour back into mentoring and coaching and developing young women. And so I kind of flipped that script and realized I had an irrevocable calling on my life. And I continued to do these crazy assignments. And so I flipped it and decided I'm going for mentorship, coaching, in a leadership role. I wanted to help create healthy leaders that could create healthy families, healthy cultures, and healthy organizations. And it is just a thrill for me. I do not go to work any day. I am having the most fun I've ever had in my life. And at 55, I made that change pretty late in life, and it was well worth the decision to do it for full time.
So I want to hear your definition of what it means to be a leader. And I'm going to ask you to, really, really go hard here because this is another one of those euphemisms that I think has so much ambiguity underneath it. And I agree with what you said. Everyone's a leader, but are they? Are they a leader if you're born a leader, but like what is your definition and how do you know, person listening, me, anyone, that you are living up to that moniker?
Yeah. Well, I am with you. I mean, in the movie world where you say you're a producer, like, really? Are you a producer or did you just pay for the film? We've kind of gotten to that place with the word leader and leadership. It is so watered down and everyone has their own definition. But the world I live in and I like to speak in kind of word pictures to help kind of compare. But I like to really look at the leader like a Sherpa. So if you've
Mm,
ever climbed Mount Everest, which I have not, but we
me
studied
either.
a lot of the Sherpas off Mount Everest. They were born at, they were already acclimated because they were born at 14,000 feet, basically above sea level. So when you look at base camp of Mount Everest, I mean, it's about as tall as some of our major mountains. The key to the Sherpa as a leader is to do two things, right? That Sherpa's got to get up that mountain and be healthy. I don't want a Sherpa with a pulled hamstring. And I don't
Mm,
want a Sherpa that doesn't have all the tools to get me up there. And so a leader is someone who can actually lead in their role while getting someone up the mountain with them. And
mm,
everybody has to get up there healthy. Leadership's not a title. Leadership is not a position. And it's really fighting for the highest good in the people you lead. And so it starts with me. I'm a leader to myself. I have to fight for my highest good every single day. And I have to make sure I'm trying to get up the mountain for myself while I'm trying to do my life. So basically, for me, a leader is doing your job, doing it well, while transferring and taking the people you're leading up that mountain with you to reach that pinnacle point and that summit.
mm. So I've been hearing pretty regularly that leadership has a leadership problem.
Yes.
And so, what is the problem that leadership has, and how can potentially these 4 different types of leadership help to keep us in check?
Yeah. Well, the problem with leadership and in a leader being the problem is oftentimes we haven't turned the mirror on ourselves. There's the golden rule, do unto others as you'd want done unto yourself. But I actually coach around the platinum rule, do unto others as they would want done to themselves. So not only do I have to know myself to lead myself, I actually have to know you too. So if Lauren's going to show up naturally in a leadership style that might be more protecting. So if we look at the support challenge matrix, so for those of you that don't know much about the support challenge matrix, it was created and originated from a book, Challenging Coaching by Ian Day and John Blakely. And lots of people have used it and put it into different formations. But if we look at it in its simplicity, it's a square and it's got a plus sign right down the middle. Top left corner's high support, no challenge. Bottom left corner, high challenge, no support. And then our opposite 2 corners is liberation, where you have high support, high challenge, and abdication, where you have low support, low challenge. And really, ultimately, when we look at ourselves as leaders, which way do we naturally lay? Which way do we lean towards? And in different situations or with different people, dynamically, we might go in different directions. So when I lead teams, I used to naturally kind of lean towards more support and less challenge. That just created a high protection environment, entitlement. That's everybody wins a trophy on the team. We all get to show up late and we're still so proud of you, even though that high performer was showing up early. It's such a frustrating culture to be in. It's like a greenhouse where plants are overwatered. Water's good until you don't need the water anymore. And the opposite corner is that high challenge, low support. That's that dominator, manipulative, belittling, that culture that you're walking on eggshells like, oh, what are they going to scream at me next? It's that coach that's like, get your head in the game, Willis. It's not the coach telling me how to actually do better in my batting average in softball. So if we're shooting towards that upper right corner, that's calibration of support and challenge, it's opportunity and empowerment. It's basically really liberating. So it's looking at you, Lauren, and saying, you're such a cheerleader. You're so fantastic, but I'm also going to sharpen you. I'm not going to let you just sit in the support smooth edges. I'm going to say, I believe you for more. You can conquer the world at 80 years old. Like, we can change anything. So when we look at leaders, I'm really wanting leaders to calibrate each person they lead. Think about each person as a plant, and you're the gardener. So with the little plant card that you might have in a plant, you need to know in each person you lead, what kind of sunshine do they need? What kind of water do they need? When do they need to prune? When do they need to grow? How do we get each person to thrive? And I mean, listen, if you're a parent, you do not raise every child the same. Am I right out there, people? Like, we know I was the one that my parents had to put a lot of boundaries on. My brother was very much so the more obedient child. And so same thing with the teams that you lead and people you lead. And when you lead yourself, when do you support yourself too much? When do you dominate yourself too much? And how can you liberate yourself as you liberate others? Does that make sense?
Oh, wow. This is really good. I just want to clarify, when you say challenge, is it the challenge that we want to share with others, to challenge them to up level or ourselves at the same time? Is that correct?
Right. So when you're leaning more towards challenge in a leading perspective of others, you're creating too much domination, too much opportunity. We like to look at challenge as opportunity. So if someone's like living in their strengths and they really are just coasting in their career or coasting in their position, and they're just kind of mediocrity sets in, we want to give them opportunities of growth. We want to challenge
Mm-hmm.
them to something greater, because that's when we level up and help level up people. But if we go the opposite direction and we just cheer them on in their mediocrity, we're going to just get higher and higher support, and they're just going to coast and amount to nothing. Eventually could actually go down to the bottom left quadrant, which is more of an abdicator, someone who's kind of apathetic, has kind of checked out. You know, that person that clocks in and clocks out, or comes into work, does the bare minimum and leaves. And they just aren't in getting the environment in a place where there's growth, or there's a place where we're really looking at supporting and challenging each other. You really want to stay up towards that place of calibration. How do we make sure we balance support and challenge at the right place?
I am blowing the lid off of our best kept secret, our 30-day blast program. Yeah, you heard it. 30 days. We have seen so much success for this program that past clients have landed in that 30 days and increased their compensation 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, over 100%. Now, not everybody lands and earns that much in 30 days, but my point is it prepares you. And in 30 days, if you're not out of there with a changed mindset and changed, clear and simple ways to be able to navigate the market this year, then we'll gladly refund your misery and you can go back to applying now. Check out the link below for the next 30-day blast, and we would love to have you there because we live for your success, and that's what's really important. See you then. So, I'm really curious. I mean, you and I both are in the world of work and corporations and all the change that is going on. I must have, what do they say? If I had $1 a day for everybody that tells me, oh my God, the market has changed so much, you and I would be like on a heavy or fast trot, right? We'd be like, whoo, man, there we go. So what's changed about leadership? What's different in 2025 than it was maybe 4 or 5 years ago, or is nothing different?
Wow.
Why? How does this idea of leadership, which is as old as dirt, how does it meet today's organizations, marketplace, and especially for people who are in career transition?
Yeah, that's good, Lauren. You're right. Leadership, like, let's just go back to the scholars thousands of years ago, and we have role models of leadership. I don't know that there's thought leaders all over the United States and then globally, but leadership is really goes back to the core essentials. So what I think makes it different today, and what I believe in, I partner with an organization called Giant Worldwide. They power me with some of our content. And the thing that I love about what we offer, and I used to be in live events, I produced huge conferences, and I appreciated the moment of, traveling to Orlando or Vegas or someplace and meeting with friends and sitting and taking notes and bringing about bullet points and having books to read. But let's face it, we flew back home on Monday morning, and 2 or 3 other people that didn't get to go. There's a morale issue at that point in time, quite possibly. And everything that we said we were going to bring back, we're the cheerleaders going, here's the 3 bullet points we learned, and you need to implement this on my team. And these leaders come back, and about 24 hours later, they're back into emails, they're back into phone calls, and everything they just learned over the weekend really has not translated. And so what I feel like sets leadership apart today, and uniquely what I love doing, is I believe that conferences and books are great, but they're often inspirational, they're educational, and quite possibly motivational, but they are rarely transformational. And we live in a world where we must transform often and a lot and adapt. We have remote work. We have in-person work. We have hybrid work. We have more solopreneurs and more entrepreneurs than we've probably had in history. And so today, what I think has to happen is we have to have a simple, scalable, sustainable process in place for leadership development. It is not a one and done. And when we look at what leadership needs to be today and leadership development, let's just go ahead and add that word onto it, is what are you doing as a culture to create a common language for your organization? But then what is a simple, scalable, sustainable process that you're using? And we offer a platform that's technology based. So it's high tech and high touch. So you have a coach and you have a technology. And that's where I think the new leadership development model really needs to go to impact globally what needs to happen.
So I would like to have you break down, I don't know if you call them prototypes or what are the kind of details underneath some of these leadership styles.
Yeah,
And
sure.
also help us to find out how we can accurately assess which one of these we are. Because I know that you are not only traveling and bringing this to organizations, but you also have your own leadership forum. So you are not just helping people identify it, but then being able to actually implement and align so that they are providing healthy work environments. I feel like that's like being in a work culture with a really lousy leader is like, corporate malpractice. They're
Yes.
dealing with lives and crazy emotions and people's, compensation, their
Yep.
time, all of that. So what are the four leaders
5.
and five, excuse me, five,
Yep, it's
and
good.
what do
Yeah.
they look like? Like, how do they manifest themselves?
Yeah. That's great. I actually love working with something called Five Voices for Teams. Five
Mm-hmm.
Voices is from Giant Worldwide. It's rooted in Myers-Briggs. So we look at any assessment, you name them. We've done colors, we've done animals before, we've done strengths and working genius and DISC and Enneagram, all of them. You name your favorite assessment, I'm a junkie of it. But what the assessment gives us, what I like to say is it gives us an MRI. And with an MRI, it does nothing for us unless we do something with it. And
Mm-hmm.
so I like to say, I give you an MRI, which are these 5 voices leadership style. And then I take it, I become the doctor, the surgeon, the physical therapist, and hopefully give you a healthy organization. Understanding your leadership voice is crucial. Because if you don't know how you show up every day, you actually don't know how to show up for others each day that you lead. The 5 different voices, I'll give you mine in order because we're all 5 voices. We can all tap in to the different dynamics of behavioral leadership. In Myers-Briggs, it speaks in letters. I can tell you I'm an ENFP. But unless you're really a knowledgeable and like a
Yeah,
brilliant person in the institute of that, you don't understand ENFP.
totally.
But if I tell you I'm a connector, creative, pioneer, nurture,
Mm-hmm.
guardian, you're like, okay, Masi obviously connects dots, people's, maybe solutions with creative ideas, and then she can strategically pioneer to the end. So we have a little bit easier of a language. And those voices are really made up of how we make decisions and how we process information. And so, how we
Mm.
process information, you're either a present thinker or a future thinker. And how we make decision is either through logic or core values and people. All are fantastic, all are needed. But I might naturally make a decision out of core values and people. And within seconds, I'm going to have to go to, but will that make sense with our budget? Others
Mm.
might say, we're going to have to start working on Saturdays. I'm just going to have to deal with all the people who need to be at home on the weekends and then go, okay, we need to consider people at home on the weekends, right? So you see where I went, logic versus people. And then the
Mm-hmm.
present thinkers and the future thinkers are really, when you look at present thinkers, they start at a task and they think through with their senses, their eyes, their nose, their mouth, their ears, their hands, what they
Wait,
can
what's that
see,
one
taste,
called?
smell. Say it again.
What's that one called? The
That
one
one's
that you just
called
said.
the present thinker.
Mm.
So the present thinker thinks in today, the future thinker thinks tomorrow. So when you look at a connector, they are a future thinker. A creative, obviously, they're innovation, pioneer, they're a future thinker. But our nurturers and guardians are actually present thinkers, and their population makeup is 73% of the world. Yes.
Nurturer and
Nurturer, first voice, and guardian, first voice, represent 73% of the population. As a
wow.
connector, I represent 11%, creative first voices, 9%, pioneer first voices, 7%. We as Americans in our culture tend to hire those executive levels as pioneer or creative innovators. They only represent 16% of the population. So if you're
Mm.
a pioneer leader and you don't understand that 73% of your workforce are
Is not
present
that.
thinkers, when you walk in and talk about this big goal to expand in multiple locations, and your people in your office are going, we can't even get to Friday, payroll's not going to even be made, no one's even figured out how to get people through the drive-through for this Friday, much expand to some other place. You're a leader that people aren't going to want to follow because you speak some foreign language, which is a future speaker, instead of recognizing your present thinkers. So those 5 different voices, the first voice is your primary voice. Your second and third voice, think about them as your non-dominant hand. Your
Mm-hmm.
fourth voice is your blind spot, and your fifth voice is your nemesis. So my fourth voice is nurturer, and my fifth voice is nemesis. I really struggle in present thinking as a leader of my life, my own life, and as a leader, even with my clients. I have to actually think about, you've got to show up with all the present details. You've got to have all of the agendas done, the summaries done. You've got to have your emails ready. So I have to live outside of a strength that I'm hyper aware of. I hire partners to help me with that, but then I can live in that creative, that connector, creative pioneer future voice when I sit down and start connecting with people and connecting dots and solutions and creative innovations around that. I know that's where I naturally live, but I can't be gluttonous. There's times that I'm going to need to be in that nurture guardian role in my own personal leadership, as well as the people I'm talking to. So when we understand our dynamic, our behavioral makeup, and our leadership makeup, that's how we can fight for the person's highest good.
Mm.
I mean, a little bit of an example this weekend, Lauren, was I was talking to someone, and instantly through a few questions of me just asking her some things that I know to ask, I pretty much figured out she's a creative pioneer. She's an innovator. She has this, the creative brain and the creative leader has this like way of knowing something we can't see, we can't taste. They can see something that's almost palatable to them, but then that pioneer could drive it to the end. And so as she was talking, I figured that out, and then I knew how to speak her language. And I knew how to draw things out of her that I thought she would enjoy talking about, but I also would be learning from. So that's how the different styles work, and why I love coming in and doing the MRI.
So if I want to find that out, or if
Yes.
somebody who's listening is like, hey, how do I do self-service? How do I like go to the leadership fill up station and fill my cup up with understanding? What should we do? Where should we go?
Yeah. So one way you can do it is I'll give you a free link to an assessment if people just want to come to your podcast, look in the show notes or wherever you place it and actually download it. One thing, and it is called 5 Voices assessment. There's actually a 5 Voices app in the App Store that is totally through Apple, and you can download it and quickly assess there. One thing I would encourage people to do is I want to challenge you, barring that there was no major trauma in your life between 16 and 19 years old, that's really how you need to think about answering the assessment. Because when we we start rationalizing at 13 years old. By about 16, we come into our own being and we start really operating out of our major strengths because no one started trying to shape us quite yet. Then we graduate from high school, we start our first jobs, we get married, you have children, you go to college, and the world starts telling you what you ought and should be.
Mm.
And it starts shaping us. And so from about 21 years old until about 4 years ago, everyone told me I ought to be a detailist. I ought to produce events with great guardian ideas, guarding the bottom lines. I'd come in with a strategy voice, which they loved. I got the people, I got the resource, I know how to make it happen. I can figure out the spider web. And then all of a sudden, the world wanted to only pay me for my details or for me doing the work. And that's when I got out of my right hand and into my left hand. And then I burn out. And
Mm.
that's when burnout happens, is because the world starts alting and shooting us into roles that they think, whether it's culture, whether it's a mentor, whether it is your parents, whether it is the country we live in. We're told in America, be outgoing women and extroverted and hospitality focused. Well, what if I'm introverted and I really am not hospitality focused, but I'm an intellect? Can I show up that way? I mean, let's go to Persia. You'd be awesome over there because that's exactly, they like those high performing women. So I want you to answer the assessment more like you were in your high school years than what you do in your job because you've been
Ooh.
formed and locked
You've
in.
been dipped.
Yeah.
So we will definitely include that in the show notes. Absolutely. Now tell us, if you are somebody who wants to work with you, who is not part of large corporation, where can we go? What can we do so that we are certainly in a job search situation where we are kind of doing a little bit of a reassessment of what does it mean to be a leader when I am in the middle of a pivot, or when I am feeling like I was just stripped of the leadership identity that I was associated with in my former company? So where can we go to actually work with you and learn more about this?
Yeah. Well, I'd love for you to visit me on LinkedIn, follow me, like me, ring my bell, whatever. Masi Willis is what I'm listed on LinkedIn as. I do have a newsletter every Monday. I love sending a free tool that you can stick in your tool belt. And when you need it, you can pull it out. I explain it and give it to you for free. So you're welcome to follow me there. And as individuals, I'm offering a masterclass. I'm in one right now, so I'll have another one coming up pretty soon. I keep it really small because I am a live event producer in my past. So I thrive on live. So to go virtual was quite hard for me, but I've loved it because I kept it small. So it's made it really interactive and engaging. So you can be in a masterclass, especially if you are a small business or you have a limited budget. Getting 12 people together and reducing the price helps it be affordable for people and makes it worth for me as well. And then if you are a leader of a team, maybe you are a manager or a director, or maybe you are a C-suite, connect with me on a phone call. Everything needs to be so customized to what your specific pain points are. I can't just put something in the box. I don't want to and sell it that way. I really want to look at you and go, what do you need and how quickly can we get there? And are there people internally that
Mm-hmm.
while I'm coaching, they can be a catalyst? They can be watching me and I can help them get certified so that one day I can 2 or 3 years in walk out and you have a culture created and you have someone who's catalytic internally. You can call me back if something breaks, because let's listen, we're going to hire somebody that's going to break the system at some point in time. But ultimately, my goal is to get you to a healthy state. So LinkedIn, look there, Instagram, a website, and let's have a conversation.
Beautiful. Macy, you are such an incredible gift. Um, for those of you who don't know her, you are a must follow. You are a hugely supportive and collaborative person, being challenging too. And I just want to thank you for today, for coming on our show, for delivering and really reframing and refreshing this whole idea of leadership. And for you who've been listening, I swear my heart just goes out, and a huge, huge love and thank you. This is the last episode for this month. And here we are, we're approaching spring. So there's that. And I hope that you all, thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. And of course, we will see you next week. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining today. We appreciate your listening ears. Big time. We ask this: use these tools, not tomorrow, right now, and share them by spreading the love, leaving us a rating and subscribe so you don't miss the next career blast in a half. Most of all, thank you for you.